you got one life. You got one life to live. You got one thing that you want to do. If you had that one thing that you want to do, why would you not do it? I got into fighting because it scared me and because it was something that was just like bothering me to no end. I needed to figure out if A, I was capable of defending myself, and B, if I was capable of overcoming my fears. The idea of laying on my deathbed with the regret of not actually going all in and pursuing the things that my heart was telling me to pursue was far more painful than any of the failures that I was going through at that point. I was always an athlete. I always participated in team sports. I love baseball and hockey. Those were my main two sports. I wanted to become a professional baseball and hockey player. I remember specifically in hockey, I really liked hitting people. And I didn't learn how to stop for a long time because I just enjoyed hitting people, and that's how I would end up stopping. And one game, I ended up having a fight with about half the other team, and I was in the penalty box for like literally half the game. Because I was talking to my mom, and my mom was like, I just don't understand like why you play hockey when all you do is fight people. You should join a boxing gym. She kind of said this jokingly. In hindsight, she wishes she never told me that ever, but that planted the seed in my head that I should maybe try to fight. At the time, I was reading a book called The Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan, and I also got fired from my job, and I also broke up with my girlfriend, and my lease was ending. And so all the stars aligned when I won an online poker tournament for like 15 grand, which is crazy to think about. And as I won that 15 grand, I was literally finishing the final chapter of The Fighter's Heart, where he's traveling around the world studying martial arts, and that gave me the idea. I was like, maybe I should just go to Thailand and try it out. And so I went to Thailand, had my first 3 fights. My first 2 fights were a little mismatched. I won pretty easily. And then the third fight was against a more experienced guy who had like 30 some odd fights. And I was rocking him the first 2 rounds, knocked him down a bunch of times, but he got back up, and I didn't know Thai scoring at the time, and the first 2 rounds didn't really matter. And the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, he just picked me apart. I've never been so tired in my life. And I remember just fighting to get up from the stool between rounds. And the fact that I was able to push myself that far and take a beating, and I kind of proved to myself I was tough, that was the type of challenge and high I was looking for. So after that, I remember going back to my bungalow, was sitting in my room and thinking like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna figure this out. After my fight in Thailand, my 3rd fight in Thailand, I was also reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And so that gave me the idea of starting an online business related to Muay Thai, because I figured I could track my training, share some fights and stuff with my family and friends back at home. And also it would be kind of cool to document, especially because I knew I was going all in, this was going to be my career, to see how I progressed throughout the years. And so it started as a really simple blog where I was just tracking my training, and people started following me and asking questions. And so I started writing more blog posts, doing more videos, and it kind of came naturally. As I continued to fight, I just continued to make content, and it kind of grew into this beast that is today. In regards to my amateur career, it started off mainly fighting on Friday Night Fights promotion. I got really fortunate with a good connection with them because I show good heart and fighter's attitude, because I took a short notice fight the day of in a weight class above mine in an 8-man tournament. And in hindsight, if I knew what I knew now, I would have never taken that 8-man tournament, because the guys in there were savages, and I didn't think that much of a weight difference, but it was a big difference. I fought a really good first fight, and it was a close split decision. I thought I won. That's the nature of the beast though. But it showed the promoter that I'm there to fight, and so from there on out, he had me coming back to fight on a lot of shows. I was fighting a lot of the top amateurs early on, and I was eventually able to win a couple amateur titles as well. So there was this one fight in particular that really, it almost made me quit Muay Thai, to be honest. It was a really satisfying fight and really satisfying victory, but it's something I would probably never go through again. And it was against a really tough opponent in Chris Williams from Canada. And first off, let me just say, when we weighed in, I thought I was bigger than him, right? And then we got to fight night, and I didn't see him before the fight, and we got in the ring, and he looked like a completely different person. He looked like a superhuman, like superhero. His quads were bigger than my body. He was like 12 packed and really intimidating looking. And so right then and there, I knew it was gonna be a hard fight. And early on in my career, I like to engage early to get a feel for my opponent's power and just to see how the fight's gonna be and just to get into the fight. And when I did it with Chris, he threw a head kick at me right away. And right away, I blocked it so my arm was a little at an angle, and I felt his shin go across my arm, and it hurt. I didn't think much of it and fought through the first round, but I remember there was like a sensation in my hand where I couldn't necessarily like grip my glove. I remember telling my corner, I think there's something wrong with my wrist. Second round came, another tough round. He kicked me a bunch of times in the arm. And after the second round, I knew my arm was broken. I knew that there was something seriously wrong because I could barely feel it. I could barely move it. Fortunately, he couldn't tell, and no one else could tell. So I did a good job at disguising it. There were a couple times in the fight where just second nature, I ended up throwing my left arm with a jab or a hook, and it would hurt tremendously. But I remember there was a couple times where I thought about maybe I should just like throw in the towel and give up. But it was for a WKA title fight. He was Canadian in New York. I'm from New York. My family and friends were there and everything. And so I was just like, there's no way I can give up. Like I gotta at least go out giving it my all. And so sure enough, we went all 5 rounds. It was a really close fight. And honestly, it could have went either way. I got the decision, and I didn't even care at the point that I won. I was just happy that I survived and I was able to make it through the 5 rounds, and then the belt was icing on the cake. But just the fact that I was able to push through that and experience that, it was really insightful to learn that about myself. In the fight as well, he also front kicked me in the face. There was a couple rocky moments I remember because he front kicked me in my face and scratched my cornea, and I saw 3 of them. And instantly I like rewound back to, I think it was Rocky 2 or 3, where Rocky saw 3 of his opponent and Mick's like, hit the one in the middle.
I see 3 of them out there. Hit the one in the middle. Right. Hit the one in the middle.
And I remember thinking to myself, all right, I gotta hit the one in the middle. And it's crazy how much you think about in a split second of a fight, but that strategy ended up working. I hit the guy in the middle that, even though there was 3 opponents essentially. Yeah, it was a wild experience, man. And now if I were to fight and I knew my arm was broken, I would stop. Because the injury and the long layoff afterwards was really difficult. And that was probably one of the harder aspects of my career and my fights in general. So after a pretty decent amateur career, I decided to turn pro, and I was really excited about it. I had a little chip on my shoulder. I'm the Muay Thai guy, right? I'm turning pro, so everyone pay attention to me. And I was fighting an opponent, Taran Hassanov, who my training partner, Chris, beat pretty handily. And so I probably took it pretty lightly. I was the headline. I definitely didn't train as hard as I could have, and that caused a little inkling of doubt in the back of my mind that was pretty prevalent leading up to the fight. Like, what if I get caught? What if I get knocked out? So on and so forth. And sure enough, the more you think about that, the more you kind of manifest it. And that's what happened. It was a first round TKO stoppage. I remember everything vividly. I kind of wish he knocked me out clean so I don't remember it. But the fact that he knocked me down in three knockdowns in a round, I remember each one in vivid detail. And just the disappointment in myself and knowing that I let myself down more than anybody. Like, people are always apologizing to their friends and family, but like, they really don't care. Like, they're happy that you're pursuing this and everything, but the fact that I let myself down in my training and my mental preparation, it was really hard to overcome. And I was really doubting myself and my ability, and like, why am I even calling myself the Muay Thai guy? Like, who am I to be in this position after getting stopped in the first round of my pro debut? And so I was in a little bit of depression for a while, and there was like a last minute opportunity to fight on Lion Fight. to fight against Pedro Gonzalez. I was like, oh, that'd be cool to do, get online and fight Pedro. I think I could do well, but I was just not in the mood right now. And my now wife, Liz, she was on the other side of the room, and she goes, what the fuck is that? Like, I remember this so vividly. It was like the whole like Adrian and Rocky story, right? And she goes, I've never heard you that scared and that like hesitant to take a fight. You used to take fights on days' notice. You used to fight twice in a week. You used to do all this kind of stuff. And now because you lost one fight, you're just gonna throw in the towel and give up. And like that like hurt. Like her telling me that like fucking hurt. And so it made me like take a step back and be like, shit, she's right. Like, I'm being like a little bitch right now, and like I'm running away from my fears, and the whole reason I got into fighting was to face my fears. And so sure enough, I signed up for the fight, and the fight went pretty well. I ended up getting knocked down in the first round, and I remember replaying my last fight all over again. I'm like, no, not again, right? But I picked myself back up, and I fought a good rest of the fight. I ended up losing a decision. It wasn't as bitter to swallow, but it still wasn't. Losing is still never fun, especially on a big promotion like Lion Fight. And so I was still very down and out about that. Fast forward to my next fight, I don't remember the timeline for it, but it was here at Kenshin in Thailand. And it was on my birthday too. It was a 4-man tournament. And I trained really hard for it. And I remember when we were drawing opponents, there was 2 foreigners and a Thai. I was like, anyone but the Thai, right? Of course I draw the Thai. And I was like, all right, fair enough. Like, this will be a fun game. And if I get past the tie, then I'll have confidence going into the finals. Unfortunately, I didn't get past the tie. He just outclassed me. He had a better sense of distancing and range, and he was just a smarter fighter. He had a couple hundred fights. At the time, I had like 20 something. And so he was just a smarter, better fighter than me. So that, on my birthday, being in Thailand, away from my family and friends, the camp that I was hosting for the Muay Thai vacations ended, so no one was there. It was just me and my buddy Paul from Muay Thai Technician. And it was just a really tough time. Like, I'm 0-3 as a pro. The Muay Thai guy, and should I just quit while I'm behind? Like, what am I gonna do from here on out? And so it was a really tough period of my life where I had to figure out which direction I wanted to go, whether or not I wanted to continue pursuing the fight life and being the Muay Thai guy and everything. But fortunately, because I have such a good support system around me of friends and family, they kind of pulled me out from it, and I pushed forward. After that, I was able to get back into a winning ways, and it felt so good, man. It was like I ended up moving to Thailand because I decided, like, it's now or never. I'm getting older. I'm 32 now. When I made the move to Thailand, I just turned 30. And so I was like, all right, if I'm gonna do it, I gotta do it now. So I moved to Thailand, dedicated myself to the craft, and then I started racking up wins, started feeling a lot better about myself, and even the losses were like good fights that I wasn't disappointed about. And so it was just something that really stuck to me was hearing about some other professional fighters who had a rocky start. So I was really attached to that. I was like, I can be the hero to my own story. And so the fact that I was able to overcome that and now put together some wins and have a record with more wins than losses, I feel pretty proud of. And hopefully people can draw inspiration if they lose their first fight, lose their first 3 fights, that shit, even the Muay Thai guy loses his first 3 professional fights, and if he can come back from it, anybody can come back from it.
I will acknowledge the fact that my opponents do not expect me to win, but I will never surrender. Weakness will not be in my heart. I will look to my comrades and to those who have brought me to this world and those who have trained me, and I will draw strength from them. Who am I? I am a champion! No one will deny me. No one will define me. And no one will tell me who and what I am and can be. Belief will change my world. It has moved continents, it has moved countries, it has put man on the moon. And it will carry me through this battle. Who am I? I am a champion!
I wouldn't necessarily say this is my favorite fight, but it's one of the craziest fights I've been in. It was against a Thai. His nickname was Big Ball. And so that right there, like, Big Ball, oh shit, like, sounds like a legit dude, right? And so I remember going in against him, and he was a young, I think he was like 20 or 21-year-old Thai. He wasn't like absolutely shredded or ripped, But dude, this guy was fast, and like his kicks were like snappy and whippy, and I could not gauge the distancing. I couldn't get my timing on. Every time I was thinking punch, he would kick me. Every time I would think kick, he would punch me. And it was like super frustrating. He was just kicking my ass for 4 rounds. He landed some really solid knees that felt like my ribs were caving in. You know, when you get hit with knees sometimes, you just feel like you want to give up and like your soul is kind of leaving your body. That happened a number of times. And then he also kicked me in my head, punched me in my face. I broke my nose, there's pouring blood. I dropped down. And I remember specifically getting knocked down and thinking, like I said before, it's crazy how much you think about in like a split second. I remember thinking like, I could just like stay here. I could lay down and no one would give me shit because I'm getting my ass kicked. I just got knocked down and it looks like I'm hurt, and I am hurt. So I can just lay here and act like I'm hurt and then it's all good, life goes on. But once I thought that, I was like, what the fuck, Sean? Like, how the hell are you gonna think that? You're gonna be able to live with yourself if you just lay here like a coward and give up? And so in that moment, I got back up. I finished the 4th round with a little bit more intensity. And then in between the 4th and 5th round, it kind of gave me the sense of urgency. It was like, I knew I was losing, but once I got knocked down, like, I really knew I was losing, and I had to go for the knockout if I was gonna win the fight. And so my corner gave me some good advice on switching to southpaw and throwing my lead hook and trying to throw some more boxing combinations. So I came out with the intention of knocking him out or getting knocked out trying. And fortunately, I put together some good combinations and finished with an uppercut. And the primal scream at the end, man, and like the euphoric high that comes from overcoming that type of adversity is hard to put in words. You never want to have to do that kind of stuff, but when you do, and when you're faced with that kind of challenge and you overcome it, it's something that makes you feel very proud to be in the situation and to overcome those types of challenges. So it's like an analogy for life, right? Like you hear all the Rocky quotes about getting knocked down and getting back up. That was the time I was actually able to prove it to myself in a fight and use that same characteristics and attributes in my day-to-day life as well.
People talk about the life of a fighter, they get all romantic and shit about it and say how lucky we are, but while fighting can be a ton of fun, training for a hard fight can be super fucking brutal. It's about pushing yourself when you don't want to and making tough sacrifices in all areas of your life. My goal with my YouTube channel is to share with you the ups and downs of my fight journey with the hopes to inspire you, to become a better version of yourself through the power of martial arts.
Every time I fought, I kept finding out so much about myself. It was literally like I was becoming a new version of myself every time I fought. And not just with fighting, but with like the training camps and everything that led up to it, the nutrition, the weight cutting, dealing with haters and social media and trash talk and all that kind of stuff. You really have to take a deep look inside yourself. And so, although at first, when I first started fighting, some of it was probably pretty superficial. I wanted to be cool, I wanted to be jacked and be a badass fighter. But as I continued on my path, especially being in the Muay Thai culture, I realized how much of a way of life it is and how it really just makes you a better person. Because of fighting, I've become more disciplined, I've been more consistent with my healthy habits, I've been more focused, I've been more aware. Fighting definitely humbles you as well, so I like to think I've been humbled plenty of times. And so ultimately, I fight because it just makes me a better version of myself. You learn so much about yourself, and like I was never one to want to fight. I always ran away from it and shied away from it. But once I had the fight and I realized it's not just the fight itself, it's the lead up to the fight of all the negativity and self-doubt and all these roller coasters of emotions that you have to ride on and you have to figure shit out. It's just super insightful to who you are, and being able to go through a training camp, weight cut, and then actually step in the ring gives you so much more power in your ability to actually do things. And whether you win or lose, it's like completely besides the point, because most people talk like they can fight, like they can get in the ring and that they can do these things, but very few people, a very small percentage of people actually do it. And so once you get in the ring, you're in a very different crew, you're in a different atmosphere than most people. And one thing that drives me crazy is when people give fighters advice who have never fought before. If you've had one fight, then I will lend you an ear and allow you to have a little bit more input. Like, everyone can have an opinion by all means, but I'll actually take your opinion seriously if you've actually gone through the shit. Because until you've done it, I don't care if you sparred as hard as you possibly can in the gym, or trained super hard, or did a jiu-jitsu match. Not ripping on jiu-jitsu, but a fight is just different. A fight is just so different. You learn so much about yourself, the intensity, the amount of anxiety that you feel, and the amount of satisfaction you feel after it's all done. You're like, oh, I am capable of a lot more than I thought of. And so that's why I think everyone should have at least one fight. You got one life. You got one life to live. You got one thing that you want to do. If you had that one thing that you want to do, why would you not do it? One thing that has kept me on this path, like I said, after my broken arm fight, after losing 3 fights in a row, I almost quit Muay Thai, I almost quit entrepreneurship. I almost was like, all right, I'm tapping out. I'm just going to live a normal life. But the idea of laying on my deathbed with the regret of not actually going all in and pursuing the things that my heart was telling me to pursue was far more painful than any of the failures that I was going through at that point. And it's hard to even qualify them as failures. Like, failure is such a weird word that people use. Like, failure to me is when you just give up, when you just stop. If you lose a fight or you spend a lot of money on something that doesn't work out, that's a challenge or a mistake. That's not a failure, as long as you decide to learn from it. And so when people tell me that they want to pursue their dreams, I'm like, hell yeah, go for it, because why not? You're in the most beneficial time of human history where you can actually do it. And you have so much resources and support around you where the sky's the limit.